Welcome to another edition of Believe in Giants. Bob Papa, two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. Week number 2 of the NFL season. The Giants and Commanders in Washington. And Carl, a lot of the hoopla is now kind of in the rearview mirror as far as 100 seasons. And whether you're an alum of the team, a past Giant, a great Giant, a top 100 Giant, not a top 100 Giant, you're just like the fans right now. Let's get on to football here now, and let's start getting some wins.
Yeah, I think it's the beautiful part about an NFL season, especially early, you have the next week to look forward to, the next week to make your corrections or to put on a better display. And that's, where the Giants are right now. Interesting opponent in the Washington Commanders, in that, the Giants have done really well in this series. But they're going to probably be looking at a different Washington team in terms of their level of confidence in playing the Giants, not just because of last week, but I strongly suspect that Dan Quinn opened the week with the Dallas Cowboys versus the Giants opening day last year. And he probably is showing his defense, this is what we have to do. Now, they don't have Dallas Cowboy personnel, but the Giants still have their personnel. So in some regard, he probably thinks that he can get those guys going. And this is, a smart thing to do if you're Dan Quinn, because the Giants are wounded right now. And he thinks he can probably send a message and make them, get his team ready to go and, try to get the Giants sideways again.
As the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys, 2021, 22, 23, Dan Quinn, 6-0 against the Giants. They only averaged 13 points a game in those 6 games. Almost 2 giveaways per game, 3.5 sacks per game. But as it was told to me many years ago when I first started in this stuff, it's not as much about the X's and O's as about the Jims and the Joes.
That's right.
Now, there's no Micah Parsons. There's no Trayvon Diggs,
Lawrence.
Bland, Lawrence. There's no, last year it was Stephon Gilmore for 2 games. There's none of those players on Washington. They have Dante Fowler, Frankie Louvu on the outside as rushers. Dorrance Armstrong, former Cowboy, is there. Bobby Wagner, future Hall of Famer, is the middle linebacker. They struggle at their corner. So he may have a scheme. The question is, can the Giants exploit it based on personnel matchups?
Well, that is the key. And again, they are, in their minds, challenging or playing a wounded New York Giants football club. Obviously, the first game didn't go the way they planned, and that's an understatement. So I suspect that the Giants have kind of did a little self-inventory too, as if they didn't already do it. But if you probably poll them, they'll tell you this was not our best and we have to do much better. They're going to be facing an offense that's a little different from the one that they've faced, this Giant defense. They've got a playmaker at quarterback. Now, I think one of the things that works to the Shane Bowen defense's favor is that they are a zone principal team, which means that a quarterback who can scramble a lot, you don't want your defensive players with their back to him.
Right, meaning in a lot of man.
Correct. And it also works to his advantage, and I don't know what he's going to deploy. I know Isaiah Simmons was not on the field last week. I suspect he will be on the field this week because of his speed and his ability to track and chase. But you have a rookie quarterback. When I'm looking at his debut, his reads are not that complicated. They're giving him rookie reads, and they understand if it ain't there, here are your escape lanes. And so when you can muddy it up a bit with zone defense against a young quarterback, seeing the openings is not as defined as it is when there's man-to-man coverage. You know, you see a guy come open, you throw the ball, it's man coverage, he beats this guy. And I talked to Phil. We spent a lot of time, Phil Simms. We spent a lot of time this summer, as we were preparing for our broadcast, our telecast, and he just kind of broke down from a quarterback perspective what's more difficult on a consistent basis for quarterbacks, unless your name is Drew Brees or Pat Mahomes, guys that are great manipulators of zone defense. He says when you put a lot of guys in coverage, it's just not as defined for quarterback. He said even veteran quarterbacks in today's league, they struggle sometimes finding the opening and the timing of zone defenses, especially if you have a zone defense that's really disciplined and they're in sync, meaning they move together, they know combination routes. And, if one route comes in front of you, the one's behind you, who's taking that and who's closing that window. And Phil said with blitzing defenses and man defenses, once you know what you have, you can pretty much define where your opportunities are going to be. Obviously, you have to execute those. But he said that when quarterbacks face zone, especially young quarterbacks, you put a lot of guys in areas, it's not easily defined, and the patience that it takes from quarterbacks is something that young quarterbacks don't have a lot of. Now, I can tell you the guy in Houston does. He's got it figured out because the game has completely slowed down for him. But when I looked at Daniels on film, and you have a one-game sample of him, and they work with him every day. So he'll keep evolving. But now is the time, if you wanted to take advantage of what he doesn't know at the NFL level yet, this would be the week to do it. And I think that, Shane Bowen will have a good plan for his guys. When I looked at the Giants film, they were coordinated in their zone coverages. Now, obviously, things didn't go well, but I think they could cause some problems in terms of how the looks that they could give the young quarterback. And then at that point, it just comes down to tracking him down, chasing and tracking, or tracking and chasing this quarterback, because he is fast, he's physical, and they should be able to hit him when he's running too, because he doesn't slide a lot.
And when he does try to slide, it's very awkward.
Well, he's going to learn, but that's part of the rookie aspect of it. And he didn't do a lot of sliding in college. He used to take on people in college.
First quarterback since 1950 to have 100 or more, 180 or more passing yards and 80 or more rushing yards in his first ever career game. How about this nugget I unearthed? He's the first quarterback making his first start. Doesn't have to be week one, but he's the first rookie quarterback making his first start to run for 2 or more touchdowns since
who?
Daniel Jones, 2019, in his first ever start. Remember the game in Tampa?
Yeah.
He ran for 2 touchdowns. So Jayden Daniels and Daniel Jones are linked in an NFL stat. Carl, rhythm. The offensive line for the Giants, definitely better than what we saw throughout a majority, if not all of last year. Not perfect. How do they get a little running game going? Because you've got these 2 first-round draft pick monsters in the defensive line position. that Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, who are, they've been to Pro Bowls, and these guys are really strong in the middle. How do the Giants attack them in order to get a running game going, which then opens up the passing game and everything else?
Well, I'm sure they're going to probe the interior of that defensive line just to see if they can scheme it well. But when you have a Bobby Wagner in there, getting to the second level on him and getting him blocked has never been easy. He's a perennial superstar at that position. But I think they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to test the interior of their defense with the run game. And then they're going to have to hit the edges. They're going to have to hit the C-gap runs. When a team is normally strong on their interior, you want to go to the path of least resistance, and that's hitting those C-gap runs, outside runs, outside zone runs, things of that nature. And you're going to have to do it with some speed guys. So it may not be a matter of blocking Allen and Payne to get the inside run, but maybe cutoff blocks just so that you can get your outside runs. But it's going to be interesting. I think the Giants are going to have to commit to it. And it's got to be those dirty 2 yards. That's the thing that Brian Dable talked about last year when they played Washington, when going against Payne and Allen, is they got to be able to get to dirty 2, dirty 2 yards, and just keep the chains going. And the other aspect of it also for the Giants is play action pass has to be a factor in that. That's why you have to attempt to run. That's why those dirty 2 yards is important, because if you're getting to you're engaging the middle linebacker, you're opening up areas behind him in play action pass. So you want to be able to have some success running on the interior just so that you can set up your play action passes, and even, you can create one-on-one situations there if you run the ball well, because they'll have to commit people into the box.
Daniel Jones has started 7 times against Washington in his career. He's won 5, he's lost 1, he's tied 1. His career best game might have been the one in Washington, although, I would put a playoff win on the road against Minnesota as a best game. But he did throw for 352 down there. Remember, he hit Caden Smith in overtime to win the football game. His numbers are good. His passer rating is really good against them. Do you believe that you can step into some place where you feel comfortable and it affects performance?
Well, yeah, it does. But again, what Dan Quinn is going to do is try to make it familiarly uncomfortable for Daniel Jones.
Make it feel more like a Cowboys game than a Washington game.
Yes, the looks, they don't have the Cowboys speed, but they can do some of the things and give them some of the looks. The Giants will have to block it up. But Cowboys were under Dan Quinn notorious for, different types of twist, in tackle twist, guard linebacker twist, linebacker twist. So it's assignment football. It's not as elaborate as a Brian Flores defense, even though Brian Flores didn't blitz a lot against the Giants, but they had to prepare for a lot of different looks. This is a matter of you'll know or have a pretty good idea of who's coming. You just got to get it blocked. And obviously against the Dallas Cowboys, they could find their mismatches with the type of personnel that they had. But he wants to make this a familiarly uncomfortable scenario for Daniel Jones. They don't want him to feel like he can come in and play. And the reality of it too, Bob, is the Giants at this stage are not afforded the luxury of feeling comfortable about anything. It is, come in, focus, and compete. And then when you start to compete, you'll start to feel better. And then that's when the comfort comes. Okay, we got this. We know this is how we're going to play. Now, there's always the wild card in Washington. His name is Terry McLaurin. And he's always made big plays against the Giants defense. He is I don't know why people don't say his name with all the other really good wide receivers in the league, but he is so underrated in terms of his production. He's a competitive kid, but he's one of the best receivers we have in the NFC. And he should be mentioned with some of the better receivers or best receivers in, the NFL period. He's that guy. He might not be in that top tier, but he's right at the edge of it in terms of wide receivers because he's just so effective.
Yeah, I don't think McLaurin doesn't get the props he deserves because he's been on a bunch of dysfunctional teams, but he's as good a wide receiver. In 9 games against the Giants, he's got 783 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns. He's gone over 100 yards in 3 of the 9 games. So he is going to be someone that you got to deal with. They got Luke McCaffrey, Ed's kid, who's a rookie, who got his feet wet last week. Eckler and Robinson are used in the passing game, the 2 running backs. So the Giants are going to have their work cut out for them, especially if they allow Jayden Daniels to start running the ball a little bit and get some momentum and move the chains and keep the Giants off balance. Because we know Jayden Daniels has an arm, even though he didn't pass. I think he only attempted 1 pass last week where the ball traveled, I think, more than 10 yards in the air or something like that. And it was an incompletion to McLaurin, but I would expect as he gets more comfortable,
Sure.
Because he's got a cannon. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. Has every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Hey, you think you know your stuff? Get in on the $200,000 mega contest. Pick 5 games against the spread every week. Your chance at weekly prizes and a share for $200,000. When the game's over, head over to the online casino, get in the game of blackjack or poker. Unwind with over 150 of the slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. It's interesting. You can manipulate numbers however you want to manipulate numbers. I was in my preparation for the game. After the game on Sunday and everything that happened, I said, oh, man, here's this stat. The Giants have started 0-2 8 of the last 11 years. And that was not a good start on Sunday. But then I was like, wait a second. They haven't started 0-2 under Dable. They were 2-0 his first year. And last year they won in week 2 in Arizona and they were 1-1. So why do I care about this stat? I don't care about that stat. But as you watch the pregame shows on Sunday and you watch all this other stuff and you watch NFL Network, they're going to put that stat up. The Giants trying to avoid starting 0-2 for the 9th time in the last 12 years. Well, all I know is under Brian Dable, they have never been 0-2. So I got confidence that Dabes is going to get the thing squared away. I want to ask you a little bit about confidence. And maybe you could take us inside a real NFL locker room, because I've had countless friends. I've had family members say to me over and over, man, it must be really down over there. It must be, you could hear a pin drop. Now, I will say this. On Monday in the building, it was very quiet. And you could hear a pin drop. And there weren't a lot of smiling faces anywhere, whether it was players, coaches, ownership, GM, people that work in the building. Everybody was hushed. Then you go in there on Tuesday, and it's just business as usual. And the players, it's business as usual. They go through their routine. They are interacting as teammates, joking around, having fun, getting their work in. I think people don't really understand sometimes the mentality of the pro athlete in any sport, about the fact that once the previous game is put to bed, there's nothing you could do about it. And there was a famous quote last year. I can't remember who said, maybe it was Dan Quinn when the Cowboys got smoked
Mhm.
in a game during the season. And he said, well, we can't let what happened last week be the reason why we lose this week,
Mhm.
because last week's gone. Carl, maybe you could share with our audience how players are while Giants fans are still depressed about Sunday, and we're
Yeah.
taping this thing on Thursday.
Mhm.
Explain why the player doesn't act like the fan during the course of the week.
Because there are only 17 opportunities. And you're expected to turn the page because the new opponent is the new opponent. And you have to now focus on that in order to put the bad game behind you. And I think in most locker rooms that I've been in, it's also about the character of the guys, the determination to turn the page. Like, football, they always say it's the greatest distraction from life, or sports, organized sports is a great distraction from life, right? So when they're in that locker room amongst their friends, of course, they're not worried about what you're saying outside, but when they leave, I'm sure they hear it, but they have to focus as professional athletes. They can't dwell on last week. They have to focus on this week so that they do not create the snowball effect. Now, I think with the Giants, I think their pride probably was hurt a bit to hear that they didn't compete. You look at the film, there was no lack of effort, right? And there was some plays made. The rookie, Drew Phillips, showed us, and I think that's going to bode well going into his future, but also this season. He's a strong tackler. He's a really good tackler, right? Nubin playing around the line of scrimmage, really physical, made some plays. Muasau, he gave up the seam route in cover two, but that's just a learning lesson, right? So if they come back with it, he'll know how to play that. But he made a big play in the passing game. So there's that piece of it. And then Dexter Lawrence is Dexter Lawrence, right? He leads by example. He was very disruptive in the game. Bobby Okereke, another strong character guy. So they have the character. Now it's about competing. And I was thinking about what I would say to my best players if I were coaching them. And I would just say, go be the best. You were like, if you're Brian Burns, right? You were brought in here to be the best. Go be the best, right? If you're going against somebody's best tackle, then it should be a battle that you can win, right? All of your best players, be your best, compete to be your best. Don't settle for, well, it's just not going to be our day or my day. I'm going to just keep trying. You got to always stay in your own confidence. Even with someone like Kayvon Thibodeau, when, he didn't have a great game. I don't know. I mean, he didn't have the impactful game, but he's got to always stay in his confidence and say, okay, let me try this, or let me continue to work to get somewhere, because your best players have to impact the game. They tried hard. In my opinion, I don't think they competed to win that game. And I don't think you'll see that again from this group, because I just think it matters enough to them. And again, I'm not predicting that they're going to win each game, but I think they care enough not to give the fans the reaction that they got on opening day. And so the confidence will be there. They'll believe in themselves when they take the field. They will not take the field as a defeated team from last week. They'll take the field confident Now, when you take the field, you've got to compete. That is what it really comes down to now. The effort will be there. They don't slack, right? But the effort, the collective effort to compete with your best players playing their best is how you climb out of the ditch. You know, nobody's throwing a rope to you. Everybody wants to throw dirt on you. So you guys are, you know, they're going to have to stand on each other's shoulders to get out of this ditch. And it's going to take, you know, competing. Their best players will have to compete as the best players. And their role players will have to make sure that they're buttoned up on their responsibilities, and they'll be okay.
Anything else as far as this preview is concerned?
No, I think, like I said, I think we'll see a more competitive team. The effort will be there, but I think they'll compete. I think the offense will slow down for the quarterback, and you'll probably see a lot better decisions there as well.
All right. That's a preview of the Giants and the Commanders at Northwest Stadium. No more FedEx Field. They changed the name, but the conditions still stink from the minute you get into the visitors' locker room.
You're not lying.
Well, listen, Daniel Snyder was so petty as an owner that when the stadium first opened and the team was still owned by Jack Kent Cooke, hey, you walked into the locker room. Wasn't gigantic. It was a visitor's locker room in a stadium. And then when Daniel Snyder took over, he decided instead of the locker room being a gigantic rectangle, he decided to build a wall right in the middle of the locker room. Now splits the locker room in half and makes it unbelievably unmanageable as far as even at halftime for a coach to speak to the team or whatever's going on. So cramped. So hopefully Mr. Harris and the new regime in Washington find a way to get a stadium built where the old RFK was, get a lot of those people from DC in the fold again and build a nicer stadium, because that place was a dump the day it opened.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
So that's my final thought. All right. How do we like to end this?
Tell a friend to tell a friend.
Believe in Giants.